Boobies. Boobies. Boo hoo 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 bees. Boobies. Boo 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 boobies. Boobies. Bah. let's adjust that. All right, boys, welcome back. Today is Thursday, May 8th, 2025, and I'm doing another live stream on a special Thursday edition because the state in which we left with scriptable objects last night, I couldn't let that stand. And I absolutely needed to do a follow-up stream on that because I want to better understand scriptable objects and the supposed power that they hold over Unity. Of course, my name is Addy, and I'm actually joined tonight with my wife, who's in the background. She, I don't know if you can see her, but she's there. Wait, say hi. So she's joining me on the bed behind me to, just kind of hang out and just be in the background so I can... She's got the animals because the dog and the male dog and the male cat. Well, we only have one dog. We do have a male and female cat. The dog and the male cat are obsessed with her. Like literally, if I work from home, and my wife she leaves every day. She leaves very early. She goes to work and then she comes home in the evenings. If I'm home all day, I will not see the black cat, the male cat. I will not see him. But the second she gets in the door, that cat is downstairs, wherever she is. Like, it's insane. The animals, they couldn't care less about me. Little do they know that I am the one who provides them with this lifestyle, with all the food and the shelter and everything. But do they care? No. All they care about is my wife. That's it. That's all they care about. All right, so I thought we would start off with a game of chess as we have been doing recently. Let's get that underway. How does that sound? I would like to play a game of chess. Let's do a 15-10 rapid, and hopefully we'll find somebody relatively quick. We won't have to wait too long. There is a video on scriptable objects. I was thinking we could watch that. Maybe I could just do a reaction to that. And maybe that's what we'll do tonight is I just watch this video and kind of react to it and give my thoughts on it. And then maybe tomorrow we could actually do some programming, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll decide after 10 minutes of watching the video that I don't need to watch it because I am just that good. Okay, let's see what happens here. He start E4, E5. Here we go. All right. Is he going to what's he going to do? Okay, he's going to do something weird, but all right, we'll just keep developing. I have found that is generally the best thing you can do. When your opponent does something weird, you just develop normal. Like, why? What is that move? Like, what is that about? All right, let's just go ahead and put this up here. If I take, he takes, and then I fork. And then out of that, I win a pawn, unless of course he takes with the horse. I take, he takes back. Then I don't have any recourse. Let's just go ahead and castle. We'll just stick with that. Can't go wrong with castling. Has never been a bad option. Okay, he castled as well. All right, I'll just push up. Maybe we'll pin his horsey. We'll pin the horsey so that he can't move. All right, so he wants to come over here. I'm wondering if I think he was probably thinking about doing this, bringing his horsey down to G5. All right, so maybe he wants to go like this. I'm going to kind of preempt any move here to G5. G5 looks like a hot square right now, so I'm thinking that's probably what he wants to do. We are playing Space Fox 16, who is a rated 1070 with a question mark, which means he hasn't played a lot of games, so we don't quite know what his rating is. All right, so I'm tempted to just take, because then but then he takes. No, I'm not a big fan of that, actually. The reason I'm not a big fan of taking is because I take, then he takes back, and though he has double pawns, he's kind of opened the file for his rook, which I don't really want to do. What if I push? He takes... I take, he takes. No, pushing's not good for me. What if I move my queen up? Maybe to move my queen, thinking about trying to get my queen into the game somehow. Maybe I could bring this back. I could bring that up. I don't know. That's not really smart either. I do kind of want to connect my rooks. Let's just go here. Connect the rooks. So far, this is a very boring game. Nothing has been taken. Every piece is still on the board. All right, so something is about to be taken here. So I take, he takes, I take, he won't take. I think I win this exchange. So I take, he'll take back. He has to take. Now, if I take here, he won't take because then I'll just get the queen. So let me do that. And obviously he's not going to take with the queen because then I would just take the queen. Oh. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. That was very generous of him. Does he resign at this point? Yeah. Yeah. At this level, like when people lose the queen, and yeah, there's no hope. So I gained 11 points. We're climbing our way a little bit closer to 1200. Okay. So let's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch this. I'm going to watch this video. This is a talk. Let me stop the music. This is a talk from Unite Austin, which I suppose is a Unity conference or a game development conference held in Austin in 2017. So this is 8 years old. However, I'm going to assume that it's still applicable because scriptable objects are still in the game, and it is described as an immensely powerful yet often underutilized feature of Unity. So let's go ahead and amp the playback speed up to 1.5 and get started.
Proud to be into it. So it's named. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to my talk. I'm actually pretty
excited. Oh my God! Look who is in the house. It is Not Sure. He has. Where have you been, my man? We were talking about you yesterday. You haven't been around in ages. What the F? You just disappear on us? You disappear with no notice for like 3 weeks, and now you want to come back and act like everything is normal? No, I want explanations, friend. I want a reason, and it better be a good reason too. Jiggle physics is the only thing that matters in games. Yeah, I mean, you got to have the right things that jiggle.
It doesn't have to be a post-mortem of a game you've played for people to be into it. So thank you for coming to my...
So again, just to kind of reiterate for Not Sure and anybody else that's listening, last night, Razman threw a wrench into things when he said I needed to use scriptable objects. So I went down this whole path, like for 2 hours, I was like researching, we can call it researching. I was asking AI and doing Google searches and trying to figure out like WTF is the point of scriptable objects, because they seemed like they didn't seem like much more than just kind of like what I've been calling free floating classes. And I guess I was like, by the end of this stream, I got very angry during the stream. If Razman shows up, he'll testify that I got very angry in the stream. But so I am still trying to appreciate scriptable objects. I have a feeling though that scriptable objects, I'm trying to think of something analogous, but sometimes what happens is you're told to do something a certain way and you don't quite appreciate why, but it's just because you're not experienced. And then the more experience you get, the more you appreciate the thing that you were told to do that at first you didn't understand why you were supposed to do it that way. I have a feeling that is what scriptable objects are. I'm trying to have faith in the wisdom of the crowd, but it's really difficult, especially when you're as smart and as intelligent and as awesome as I am. Not sure says I've been working 2 jobs. Oh man, that sounds rough. All right, I guess you'll get a pass. You'll get a pass, but just this once. Just this once.
My name's Ryan Hipple. I'm a principal engineer at Shell Games. Shell Games Studio.
Let me know how the volume is on this video.
15 years now, and we at the moment are doing a lot of virtual reality and augmented reality, or XR if you want to say that. So it's VR and AR.
And if 1.5 is too fast, let me know. I'll slow it down to 1.25. But it's like an hour long, and I want to stop and like react as we're listening. So yeah. Anyway.
Stuff with location-based entertainment and stuff that you can ride in certain theme parks in the country. And we have a long history doing transformational games. The studio's up to around 100 people right now, probably around 110.
I'll slow it down to 1.25.
Which is not an educational game. But if you haven't tried it, we have a demo right now you can play in the expo hall. I recommend playing that. I did not work on that, so I can honestly say it's my favorite VR game without that being cheating. I did work on this one, Water Bears VR, which would be my favorite game if I didn't work on it. And we have a bunch of other games that we've worked on, but these are the ones that are the most accessible.
All right, get to it.
Them available on Steam. I Expect You to Die is on Octane, which
All
is
right.
all of our work in Unity. So watching that transition and being one of the first people that actually jumped in and started working with you.
More volume.
A lot of common patterns
All
are
right.
emerging. People tend to be able to find stuff online in the documentation or just from chatting with each other to understand how to do the algorithms that they need to solve this small problem they're trying to do. They understand how to write C#, they understand how to write code and get things where they need to be.
Yes.
But the big piece that's missing is the big picture. How do you get all of these tiny little parts of your game to come together and actually be a cohesive game?
I don't know that is a challenge for me. I feel like I'm kind of used to having a bunch of little parts and kind of making them all work together as one cohesive machine. But yeah.
So I'm going to talk a lot about my approach to game architecture using scriptable objects.
All right.
The glue between everything.
Let's hear it.
Can we get an updated timer countdown here? Let's keep track of my time. Before we talk about architecture, though, we do need to talk about pillars, which sounds
Do we
super
really?
cheesy, but it's actually kind of true.
I don't know. Do
At
we
the studio,
really?
I've been the way that I've been
Not sure
operating
it says the
projects,
volume
I've
is
never
perfect.
really actually
Thank
had
you.
to sit down and plan out. These are the pillars. These are the decisions that
I did that.
The
That's
things
me.
that I ask myself whenever I make a decision. But when I actually sat down to put this talk together, I realized that they've been there the whole time. I just have to put them in writing. So these are the things that, in my approach, what I use to make big decisions for how a game comes together. I want everything to be modular as much
Yes.
as possible. We want everything to be editable, either runtime editable or editable by
of course,
designers, artists,
yeah.
anybody on the team. And we want to make sure everything is debuggable. Modular, editable.
Aren't games just big state machines? I know you're asking this in jest. Like I know it's kind of like you're kind of joking. Yeah. But there's no but in that statement. There's no but in that
and debuggable.
statement.
Modularity, what I mean by this is our systems are not directly dependent on each other. So if you have
Yes.
an inventory system, you want that to
So one of the things that I have kind of kept in the back of my mind for this game that we're writing is I have been trying to approach things in a way where I know that I will want to write a second game at some point. And so there are a lot of common mechanics that are just going to exist in like pretty much any game you write. Like a pickup mechanic, like picking things up, an NPC mechanic, an item mechanic, which we started on last night, like trying to pick up arbitrary items. So these mechanics are going to exist in all of these games. And what he's talking about with modularity is I'm trying to make it so that like these prefabs, I can kind of just bring them over. Or maybe not the prefabs, but the classes and like the code to some extent, I can just bring that stuff over into the new game. And then it'll just work. And then I just kind of have, I bring the parts over. It's like a sink. I can bring the sink into the new house and I just need to hook it up and boom, it'll work just fine.
be able to communicate with other systems in your game, but we don't want a hard reference between them because
Yes.
it makes things less flexible and you can't reassemble them.
Exactly. So the hard reference. And that's actually one of the things I wish Razman was here because that is one of the reasons that I kind of push back against using singletons, because oftentimes with singletons, you will have a hard reference to some asset, to some class, to something that that the singleton is now dependent upon making, oh shoot, I sped ahead, but now I'm all distracted. But singletons are not very good for modularity.
And using components. Unity is a component-based engine, and it's one of its greatest strengths.
Oh, wait, I skipped a couple. Let me see.
Minimize, you don't destroy unload objects. Every time you hit a scene, it's a clean break, it's a clean load. This allows you to have scenes that have unique behavior that weren't present in other scenes without having to do a hack. If I see code that says something like, if scene.name is not equal to menu scene, I throw up all the time, all over the place.
Yeah, that sounds bad.
Just a mess. Also, prefabs, having them work on their own. This means, this goes very hand in hand with scenes being clean slates, where every single prefab you drag in the scene, as much as possible, having that prefab have its functionality contained inside of it, being a modular piece.
Right, and that's kind of also what I was thinking, like of what I was saying, that like you could do that with like a prefab. Like let's say that I wanted to have I was wondering, like I did my hair for you guys, but I was wondering, like I was thinking, like, okay, let's say that the rusty knife that we were working on last night that started the whole journey down the scriptable objects bullshit. But maybe there's another game in the future, I would want to have a rusty knife. It would be nice if I could just have the pick upableness, as I was calling it, the name, like if I could have everything self-contained. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to keep talking just to sound smart. Just everybody knows you're smart, Addy. Just calm down.
Bigger teams where scenes are just a list of prefabs, and then your prefabs are the individual functionality. So you'll have most of your check-ins working on just at the prefab level, so you'll have fewer conflicts in the scene.
Okay,
and using
I guess.
components. Unity is a component-based engine, and it's one of its greatest strengths.
Yes.
As much as possible, break things up into components that do one thing and only one thing, and then we can talk about how we can get those components to communicate.
To communicate, yes.
Editable. When I say editable, this should be kind of obvious. People can edit things. So the inspector is the #1 tool that we have to do that. But if we focus on data, if we try to make as much of our game data-driven and our systems just be these machines that process that data as instructions, we're going to be in a much better place to be able to make changes to the game, even when it's running.
Okay.
Also,
I'm going back to 1.5.
Code. If we're component-based, if we're modular,
just
it's easy to
talking a
make
lot.
your game editable. If we have lots of options for all of the things that our game can do, again, we want to allow for designers and artists to change things. And this leads to something that I kind of refer to as emergent design. What I mean by that is if designers are able to piece things together in your game without having to ask for an explicit feature, or if you're a coder and a designer, you don't have to code the exact feature.
I will tell you, the one game, I think I've talked about this before, I'm going to talk about it again, though, because he's talking about emergent design. I mean, emergent design is okay. I'm not sure I quite understand what he's talking about, but emergent behavior is more of what I'm familiar with, and I'm sure that this concept of emergent design derives from emergent behavior. But the one game that I saw to completion, I still remember, like, I had NPCs that were kind of like following a path, and then they would hunt you down if they saw you, and then they would shoot at you and try to kill you. And while you were able to shoot at them. And I just never forget, like, the first time that I finished some functionality so that it was in a semi-playable state. It wasn't balanced. There were still bugs and everything. But the first time that I was able to hit play or compile and run, but the first time I was able to do that and actually see the NPCs running around hunting me, and there was like an emergent quality of it, because emergent behavior is like if you have a bunch of like, let's say you have a bird object, and then you give that bird object simple rules, like, and this might not be valid, but because I'm just making up, but let's say the bird, you give it a rule that's like fly forward. If you see another bird, follow that bird. And then if you see an enemy, turn around. And now what you do is you just take, so you take that bird object and you copy it to like 1,000. And then you put them all together and just let them go. And then that's how, like, you see emergent behavior, like when you see birds, like when whole flocks of the birds just turn at the same time. It's the same thing. It's emergent behavior. It's so cool. It's really just so cool to like see it, because it feels alive. It really makes your game feel alive.
You find yourself in a place where
Not Sure says the whole is more than the parts. Yes, it definitely is.
Where these tiny components that are proven to do exactly one thing and always do that thing right, because it's easy to test if it's a single outcome, you can rearrange those in different ways and find new game mechanics that you didn't know that your game even really accommodated. And we've seen some of like the coolest features in the games that we're working on come from that sort of idea. And allowing it to change at runtime, super important for iteration. The more you can change your game at runtime, the more you can balance and find values. And if you're able to save your runtime state back out.
I guess. I don't know about that. Like, I don't know, like, that being such a priority, that seems a little, I guess. I do wish that there was a way to save game state, and not so much game state, but game settings, when you run a Unity game and then you change the values in the inspector, and then I wish there was a way to save it at that point. There is no way. Oh, well, actually, I read somewhere that there is a way, but you have to like jump through hoops to do it. I don't want to jump through hoops. I just want it to be default. I want it to be on.
Like scriptable objects do, you're in a great place. And things being debuggable. This is
yeah, runtime changeable is
really
cool.
Well with the other.
I do like the hot reload aspect of Unity, where like I change a C# file and then it automatically reloads without the game restarting. That's a cool feature. I've always liked hot reload. I mean, but what developer doesn't? I mean, it's hot and it's loading. A hot load. Wait,
Pillars that I've mentioned. The more modular your game is, the easier it is to test any single piece. And the more editor features you have, the more editability you have.
Debuggable. Well, yeah, of course it's debuggable.
So making sure you can view debug state in your inspector and never considering a feature done until you have some plan for how you're actually going to debug it.
Okay.
And this is kind of unrelated, but it is my number one rule that I will always state, that you never fix a bug you don't understand. You have to follow the bug, understand it, get to know its
that's
family,
fair.
and kill it in front of its family. So the pillars have things be modular, editable, and debuggable. Also, bonus points if anybody knows what those pillars are from. Yes, Legacy of Kain, I'm buying you a beer. It's an open bar, so. So scriptable object basics. We'll look at some of kind of the goals of our architecture, but let's make sure we're on the same page about what we can do with scriptable objects. So here's a quick primer. It's a serializable class in Unity.
It's a serializable class. What class is not serializable? Like, I guess.
It extends monobehavior, or it doesn't extend monobehavior, sorry. It's similar to monobehavior, but without a transform and no game object.
Okay.
And I learned from Richard Fine's scriptable object talk last year, which everybody should check out. That's kind of, I had to cut most of my material.
But as far as I know, scriptable objects do not have a start. They don't have an awake. They don't have an update. But okay. But it's purely data, so I guess, okay. All right.
The monobehavior under the hood is actually, and the scriptable object are the same exact type on the C++ layer of the engine. So they're very similar. Typically, you'll save it as a .asset file. This is not necessary. You can actually just leave them in memory and work with them there. So you can create one with create instance at runtime and just use that as something that you reference.
Okay.
And even more fun is you can actually save more than one scriptable object into a .asset file. And I'm not going to get too much into that. I've spoken about that before.
Well, yeah,
about 2 years ago.
That's just adding a class. So let me. So that sounds dumb. All right. Like where would it go? Item data. Oh, wait, what happened? Item data. Yeah. So here, I mean, all you got to do is just have another class in the file. Like I've already done that in a couple of things, but okay.
Hack Spectrum talk.
I got to remember who the target is. The target of it is not just noobs to Unity, which is what I am, but the target is also noobs to programming, which is fair. Nashra says we should make the knife the base NPC class. But see, that's the cool thing. It's like, oh, wait. How could I do that? Like I was thinking, I mean, I guess you could just derive like a knife class from. See, I almost feel like you need an interface there, because then you could attach an interface to the knife class. If the interface was like enemy NPC, and then you could like. Now, actually, I'm overthinking it actually, because all you really need to do is just have the knife model. Just put the scripts onto the knife model and it'll work. I'm overthinking it.
Where you can just pump a bunch of data objects into this so they maintain internal references and you can't accidentally delete something that's super important. All right, so some simple use cases that we have for scriptable objects.
Well, you should never be able to delete something that's super important. That's why you have source control. Like that's what source control is for.
Some of these are great, some of these have problems, but these are the things that I've noticed teams do the most, using it as a massive game config file. So how many people here are doing this with them, where you have a file that says, this is my path to this other object I need, this is the sound that I use when we click things. So this is a very common use case.
I don't know if, does he mean like a config file, like a user end config file, or does he mean like a config class? Because I don't know, like as a config file, that doesn't seem to make any sense. Like who's doing that? Is anybody really using C# files as a config file? Like I know this is something that Lua actually says you could use Lua files as a config file. And I'm like, okay, sure, you could. And yeah, sure, I guess you could with C# too, but why would you? I mean, like if you're talking about if you have a settings window or a settings scene or whatever, you click on settings and you get your settings, like you set your volume and other things, your resolution. I would probably like my mind would default to like I'm going to save that in a JSON file. I guess if the C# files are, or if the classes are, I was going to say if the classes are easily serializable, but what are you serializing them to? Like I would serialize them to a JSON file, or I've actually kind of discovered this I've discovered human JSON, which I really like, and there's something at my day job where I'm like kind of put like the code base at work. There, for historical reasons, there are 3 different JSON libraries in the code base. One is used for performance, one is used for in situ, and then the other one is used for convenience, essentially. And I really want to add a human JSON library to it, but it's like, ugh. But it's like another one. Not sure it says human JSON, aka YAML. I mean, kind of, but not really. Like, I really like human JSON. I'm a big fan of human JSON.
In inventory, if you think of a simple inventory, it's just a list of objects. I'll go over some details on taking that a little bit of a step further and making it more modular.
Inventory? I guess.
Enemy stats is another place.
I am still not completely convinced on the scriptable objects aspect of all of this, but that's why we're watching the video. That's why we are watching this video. Even though Razman is not here to defend it, we're watching this video to learn. Right, baby? See, she agrees.
Also, from Richard Fine's talk, if you have a bunch of enemies, say 20 prefabs or enemies that have different visuals, but they want to behave the same, it's very easy to have them reference this enemy stats object. So that's a common
In case you didn't notice, not sure.
In
case you didn't notice, my wife is behind me. She's in the room tonight.
Scriptable object as an asset that references 10 audio clips, and then you can ask it to give you a random one. So how does this relate to game architecture? Well, before we actually start talking about where scriptable objects fit in, I do want to address one of my #1 problems with the current trends with game architecture.
Okay.
Natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, mass extinction events, the cancellation of Firefly, and that tiny piece of skin that gets.
There's a person back there. Yes, there is a person back there tonight. Yes, my wife is back there tonight. Can you see? Oh, wait. Say hi, honey. Yeah, there's a person back there to see. Like, I'm not like I actually like do have a girlfriend who also happens to be my wife. So like I have talked to girls before.
Look at your hands off. Also, nuclear war. All of these things are caused by the same thing, and it's probably sitting in your game right now. Singletons.
Oh man, why couldn't Razman be here? Oh my god, I have to. Okay. I got to back that clip up a little bit because let me make sure the timing.
Singletons.
Let me get the timing a little bit better. Let's see if we take this down to 78.
By the same thing, and it's probably sitting in your game right now.
All right, let's go back here. 75.
Also, nuclear war. All of these things are caused by the same thing, and it's probably.
All right, yeah, I'm going to send this to Razman right now before I forget. Since he's not here. I'm going to send it to him on in. Let me see. I just want to do it before I forget, because if I say I'm going to do it later, I will forget. So here, right there. All right. Let's get back to this.
Sitting in your game right now, singletons. How many people here are using singletons in their game? Show of hands, please. Let's be honest. So I was actually expecting not applause. I was expecting everybody to be very upset with me on this, because it's kind of one of those, it's almost a religious thing where the choices that you make when you build your game, you have to believe that that was the right choice. But it is important, since we're talking about something that's sensitive, that we are responsible, objective, and mature about it. So let's talk about the benefits. Why?
Oh wait, this is normal speed. Okay, let me get back. Okay, because I opened up a new tab. All right, let's just go back to 1.5 speed.
This decision, why do people use singletons if I'm saying they're as evil as they are? And also, when I was looking this up, I actually found there's a scotch called Singleton. This is a real thing. If you just do a Google image search or Bing image search, this is the first thing that will come up. And I thought that was kind of funny. So you can access anything from anywhere. This, I think, is probably the number one argument that people have that why the singleton workflow is convenient within their game. If I have this if I have this piece of UI that wants to know what the player's name is so it can display it, playermanager.instance.name, done. I'm done writing this component. So that seems like an attractive thing.
I get it. Singletons, I mean, but it's the same deal with, they're singletons are basically object-oriented global variables. That's what they are.
Any part of your code. Generally, the implementation allows for this persistent state. What I mean by that is the common Unity implementation that I see people do is their singleton will instantiate a mono behavior in their scene that they flag as don't destroy on load. That creates an object that persists across all scenes, even menu, which is why we often see if name not equal to menu. It's an easy to understand pattern, or kind of consider it more of an anti-pattern, but it's easy to understand, consistent, and easy to plan. So all of these things are very related. It's very clear. I'm going to build the enemy manager. So all
right, now I'm assuming he's going to talk about singleton drawbacks as well.
Access anything else, and then I'll build the player manager, so I'll just have that access the enemy manager. So that makes something much more easier for a team to go in and just start building things without having to put a lot of thought into how these systems communicate with each other.
Yep.
And just like the singleton scotch, this is when you go down in a small project in small quantities, it's something that works out. It has a lot of benefits. It could even make your workflow faster. But if you were to finish the entire bottle at night, you're going to find yourself with a lot of headaches. So down the road, if you do use singletons in larger projects,
rigid connections. The rigid that's a great way of putting it.
That pillar of modularity.
That's what I'm always talking about. Where the dependencies that a singleton has, it makes it very difficult. A singleton is not modular. It's not modular. I guess if you really work at it, you could have it be modular, but generally singletons are not modular.
And not the other. They're all depending on the other ones being there. You're also removing polymorphism. This is, if we're using an object-oriented language, we expect it to be able to take an instance,
that's true.
Some known type, and have that act differently based on what its actual type is. If I say player manager.instance, I'm asking the player manager to give me something. So I would not expect that to be able to give me the tutorial player manager, or the debug player manager, or the testing player manager.
Well,
so we're breaking that.
That's a weird argument. Like, why would you? That's like saying, I don't know. I can't think of it. I can't think of it. It's just a weird argument. It doesn't seem like a very strong argument.
And it's not very testable because of all of these.
Not testable. What have I been saying since day one? They're very, very difficult. The reason they're not really testable is because they have these rigid connections. So now if you want to test something in your singleton, you have to bring over into your test code, you have to bring over all of those rigid connections in order to have the singleton work. That's why they're very difficult to test.
These things, not being modular and not allowing for us to inject a different type of player manager makes it more difficult to test. And ultimately, what most of this leads to is it's a dependency nightmare.
Yes, dependency nightmare. That's what I've been saying. Like, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. Why doesn't Razman get it?
We also have this global state, which means that when we jump from scene to scene or we go to place, it's not everything we want to persist, but some things will persist that aren't really what we want. The dependency nightmare makes it difficult to test things and makes it difficult to track, and you get race conditions that come up a lot in this sort of case. And there's a single instance, which should...
Not sure says, ooh, it sounds monolithic. Yes. No, that's exactly it. It's very monolithic. And like this guy said, for small projects, it might be fine. For small, very small projects, because again, think of a singleton as a global variable. That's essentially what they are. And if you do any kind of research on should I use global variables, the universal answer is more or less no. And then you can find out reasons. And a lot of the reasons that you don't want to use a global variable are applicable to singletons.
Shouldn't have to be spoken, but yes, a singleton has a single instance, and that can introduce challenges if you decide player manager doesn't make sense. We've got couch co-op now, so we need to handle 2 players. You could go in player manager and add an array, or
I will say that I have used singletons. I use singleton, and I remember when I did this. It was a very conscious decision. It was probably around 2018. I literally remember this because I use singletons so rarely. But this was on a work project, so that's why I remember it, because it's like in my own projects, I'll be like, do I really want to do this? Screw it, I'll do it. But at work, it's like, okay, it's work, right? Like I need to, other people are going to read it, so there's that aspect of it. Like I don't want to look like an idiot. And then of course it's like, it's also my job. So anyway, so there's a difference. But the reason I remember I used the singleton because you had the way that this code worked is you basically had a low level layer, right? Where I needed to get some config values where you'd flip a switch up at the top level, and I needed to know at the bottom level if that switch was flipped or not. And in order to do that, I had to pass it down, pass it down, pass it down, pass it down. and like it had to go through different layers, but then I would need it over here as well. So, but then that's a whole nother traversal of the pass down, and it was just a nightmare. And then I knew that this thing that like you can think of it as a config value, but I knew that this config value, I knew it was going to grow, and I knew I was going to need other things. And so I was like, well, I could just make it a struct, but then even then I got to pass it down. And this is C++. So I have to be conscious of like, okay, where is it created? Where does it get destroyed? Blah, blah, blah. And so I was just like, fuck it. I'll use a singleton. There's a soundbite. Fuck it. I'll use a singleton. Like what is it? Bill O'Reilly, that famous Bill O'Reilly? Like, oh, we'll do it live. Yeah. It's this, oh, wait, no.
That's tomorrow, and that...
No, wait. This one probably.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
Yeah. Oh, wait. It sounds funny because it's playback speed, but yeah, that's what I was thinking of. This right here. Let's listen to it at regular speed.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
Fuck it. We'll use a singleton. But that's kind of where I was at. And it was a very conscious decision. And before I actually committed the code, I was like, and this is another thing, like at work, I will try to think of what other developers, what they might question about what I have written. And a singleton, I had to think, okay, what if so-and-so asks me why I used a singleton there? So I needed to be ready to defend it. And I do this all the time at work. Like any kind of decision that I think might even be slightly controversial in my code, I will defend it. Before I write it, I will try to come up with defense arguments for it. And if I can't, that tells me, well, maybe I should think about something else. If I can defend it, then I'll go forward. With the singleton, very rarely will I ask myself, okay, if Bob asks me why I used a singleton, is the only answer I have laziness? Because that's not a valid answer. Sometimes it is, but the only time it is in my code. In work code, it's not really an answer.
Same with Enemy Manager, but it does have this limitation that you're going to have to go back and revisit things if your model changes. So what are our solutions for some of these problems? At a high level, I'll talk about how do we reduce our needs for global managers? How can we build structures that don't force us to have this global state tracking? And
it's called steel manning. Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it too. Yeah, I need to steel man my argument for the decisions I make.
Model of inversion of control. This is a software design principle. The most common use case, the most common example of this is dependency injection. I'm not going to get into a very formal definition of a dependency injection within this talk, but the general concept of objects being given the things that they need to work with rather than going out and getting them is the approach that I want to take here. So instead of this piece of UI that displays the player name saying playermanager.instance.name, something in the game needs to say, hey, you UI piece, here's the string you should display. I don't know where I got it from, don't ask any questions, just display this string. That will make that piece much more modular, reusable, and editable. But there's
wait. Reduce need for inversion of control. Example: dependency injection object. Okay, I kind of got distracted.
There are dependency injection frameworks that exist that is responsible for passing references.
So
to
current thing enjoyer. I don't know if they're still listening on. I guess that's Twitch. Asks me, are you liberal or conservative? Honestly, I'm a C++ programmer.
And in my mind, that is exactly what the Unity editor does. That is what the inspector allows you to do. You can have a prefab that says, I display something, and then you can give it a reference to something that it can use to look up that string name. And along the same lines of this single responsibility principle, where every class you write or component, in the case of Unity, does only one single thing. Again, this aids in modularity, debuggability, and also
objects are given dependencies. Okay, I need to pay attention. I've like zoned out.
So let's take a look at modularizing our data.
Modular data.
As much as we can. This is going to reduce the need for some global state that we can go to look data up for. Let's talk.
Okay, modular data. Okay, enemy prefab example. Let's look at this.
And that enemy prefab needs to know what speed do I move. You can dial that into the prefab directly, but if you want to have 20 prefabs that look a little bit different or have some other strange behavior, but all move at the same speed, we don't want to. It's going to be really annoying to just dial that right into the prefab. One option is it says enemy manager.instance.movespeed.
So that's a singleton.
As I talked about, that has a hard reference and that has potential that dependency
on the manager being loaded.
I have an example for an enemy prefab. When we worked on
that's a singleton pattern. It's right there.
iPad game that I worked on, where we wanted to test our enemy prefabs in an enemy prefab test scene, so we could see the animations and see them respond to things. And we drag and drop the enemy prefab in the scene and hit play. Null reference exception. Can't register with the enemy manager. Okay, drag and drop the enemy manager in the scene. And this would be the same problem if it was just a lazy instantiation. Hit play, null reference. Enemy manager can't find player manager. Okay, play, put in the player manager. Enemy manager can find player manager. Player manager can't find inventory manager. Okay, put in the inventory manager. By the time we were done, we had pretty much completely rebuilt our game inside of our debug scene, and we had saved no time and made no progress. So reducing that dependency. Another way that people could have solved this problem, and this is something that Richard Fine talked about in his talk, is having a set of variables that are associated with the enemy prefabs as a scriptable object. Okay. So your 20 different enemies can reference that one set of data, and that's a really nice way of having that data get shared. But there's a challenge there, which means you're going to lump all those stats together. So now if you have an enemy that is a ranged enemy, and that ranged enemy needs to know what's my minimum or my maximum fire distance, that's now a new variable type.
I want to slow this down for a minute. Okay, I want to make sure that I grasp this part, because he's actually talking about design and everything. Let's back up a couple seconds.
So your 20 different enemies can reference that one set of data.
Yes.
That's a really nice way of having that data get shared. But there's a challenge there, which means you're going to lump all those stats together. So now if you have an enemy that is a ranged enemy, and that ranged enemy needs to know what's my minimum or my maximum.
Wait. Yes, honey. You're leaving? Oh, all right. Well, it was nice having you. Everybody says goodbye. Bye. My wife's leaving me. Now watch, there's a cat and there's a dog here. As soon as she leaves the room, the cat and dog, they're going. They're not staying. Hey, Muping, come here. The dog. There goes the dog. Cat's staying with me. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna hold the cat. The cat is my hostage. All right. Yep. See, my wife left me. Told you guys. Knew it would happen one day.
Fire distance. That's now a new variable type that can't be added to this large definition. So this is going to break some of our extensibility and modularity if we use that approach. So what other options do we have?
Okay.
Well, I say we break them into much smaller pieces. So scriptable object variables are things we've implemented on different teams at Shell Games, kind of in different ways. But really, at the core, they're incredibly simple. I'm going to use the example here of a float variable, but we can replace float with anything else.
Okay, so we had
our internal systems, our
menu,
framework that we
yes.
use has a much more generic version, so the code's fancier, not really good for demoing. So here I'm going to be defining a scriptable object. Create asset menu. That's something that's important to make sure you can create an object from the right-click context. Public class float variable that is a scriptable object. Curly braces on the next line because we're not monsters. .NET has standards.
Yeah. Public
Thank
float
you,
value.
yes.
Float what?
We're going to define a value. We're not naming this value. We're not naming it HP. We're not naming it range that we attack from. What the variable gets named in the project view as the file on disk, that's what's going to hold the name. That's what's going to hold the meaning. And this is something that a designer can do. They can make these at will and drag and drop those references places. And here's where the class actually gets really interesting. This is where it gets fun.
Okay.
So that's it. If there's anybody here that can't understand or complete this coding task, I'm sorry, the rest of it's not going to get any easier. So in this case, we can do hit points, damage amounts, timing data, all these things for enemies, and we can have those different components reference these variables. And we'd have some stupid enemy, some stupid enemy, of course, be on the next line because we're not monsters, and variable max HP is a float variable that this references. Same with move speed. There's something that can be really annoying with this workflow, though, and that's that this can get very cumbersome. We want every bit of data to be able to be grouped like this, but
So he's using them as types. Like he's using them as types. Okay. All right. Okay.
it's kind of
That's not data. That's data definition. Like, which I guess you could argue data definition is data of itself. Sure. But this is like defining. Okay. Because everything says scriptable objects are holding data. As opposed to, okay, let's just keep going.
This one, we just want to type in the float value. So we just made this layer on top of it we call the float reference, which is a serializable class. That we have this option of saying, do we want to use a constant or do we want to use a variable? And we just can go through that. And this way, designers can say, just use this data instead, or actually want to use this shared data.
This is making me angry.
With this pattern, once we actually look up the value, it's going to return the one that we would expect. But now we can go in and almost any float that's exposed in the inspector in our game, we now make a float reference. And it's made it exceptionally more powerful for our design team to use that to configure stuff and make sure that values are in sync across.
Not Sure says he's just creating the classes. He'll then create instances later. I mean, yeah, I assume so. I'm still trying to figure out the utility of this.
Each other. So now our dumb enemy doesn't take a float variable, it takes a float reference.
Okay.
Simple enough. On top of that.
Wait. What was float? Okay, float reference. Wait, let's back up for a second. I'm going backwards. I'm trying to, okay, float variable. Okay, so you had float variable, which is a scriptable object. See, look, the cat, he is trying his best to get out of my hands. He wants nothing more than he just wants to get. No, you're mine. I'm going to torture him. I'm not going to torture him. I mean, it's going to be torture by me giving him love, but I would never be mean to my animals, except when I yell at them.
Stupid enemy, some stupid enemy, of course, be on the next line because we're not monsters. And variable max HP is a float variable that this references. Same with move speed. There's something that can be damage amounts. If there's anybody here that can't understand, we can hit these monsters.
Float variable
really
is just the class.
Flow, and that's that. This can be very cumbersome. We want every bit of data to be able to be grouped like this, but it's kind of annoying. Like maybe this one we just want to type in the float value. So we just made this layer on top of it we call the float reference, which is a serializable class.
Okay.
That we have this option of saying, do we want to use a constant or do we want to use a variable? And we just can go through that. And this way, designers can say, just use this data instead, or actually I want to use this shared data. With this pattern.
Okay, so that float variable there on the right there, the public float variable, that is the scriptable object.
Once we actually look up the value, it's going to return the one that we would expect.
Okay.
But now we can go in and almost any float that's exposed in the inspector in our game, we now make a float reference. And it's made it exceptionally more powerful for our design team to use that to configure stuff and make sure that values are in sync across each other. So now our dumb enemy doesn't take a float variable, it takes a float reference.
Okay.
Simple enough. On top of that, I love doing over-the-top inspector work. We can make an inspector that makes this kind of fit into one line and be a lot more elegant to work with. And this seems like it could be a trivial addition to this, but it's my belief very strongly that making inspector, this was actually a property drawer. Making property drawers to solve these problems that make it look like it's a part of the Unity editor is actually a huge benefit for your design team. Because the patterns that they're used to already.
See, so I'm also wondering if that is another issue of which I'm struggling. He is talking a lot about having separation of responsibility, where the programmer is consciously thinking about the designers, and I mean like asset designer, level designers, things like that, and thinking in terms of this designer is not a programmer, hence they're not as technical as me, so I need to make the act of designing my levels and my characters, I need to make that more simple and less technical. So I'm wondering if that's where I'm struggling, because of course in this scenario of us writing this game, I mean it's me and then you guys helping as you see fit, but it's not as though we actually have a design team of like, okay, we're the programmers, we've done the programming part, now go ahead and design the levels, go ahead and design the creatures and things like that. So but I'm still failing to see how this seems to have created bloat for the sake of bloat, but we haven't seen everything, so let's keep going.
And my goal has been to convince everybody on the team that this is actually a feature of Unity, and that's happened a few times where
Now, I do like what he's saying there. I like that a lot, where you have things in the inspector view, and I noticed this with, I can't remember what it was, but I had a scale there where I could slide it between the values, and I liked that because it reinforces the limits of the values of your variables, of what they can have, what they can be.
Designer on the team that I'm working on now, we're on an older version of Unity, he said, I don't think I like Unity 2017. They removed float variables. So I'm very proud of that. So here we can, this is, going back to the float variable now. So now we know how to reference it. There's actually some functionality that is hidden in here that we might not have picked up on before. So we talked about having a designer specify this is max HP. These are all these other things like move speed. But we can do some other really cool stuff with this.
Okay.
That value, that float value, can change when the game is running, and anything else that's referencing that value will get an update.
Okay.
So if we think about the way Unity's animator works,
isn't that how variables work? Isn't that how non-const variables work? And references? Like okay. I'm being cynical. I'm being arrogant. Let me stop. Let me put on my humble pants and try to come down from Mount me, and let's just, okay.
It exposes something like move speed in this case, and it uses move speed as a...
Okay, so now we're getting into territory that I really don't know anything about, because this, I believe, is the Unity state machine. Is this or maybe the animator? They're very closely tied. They're tied closely, well, whatever. But you get what I'm saying. So I'm not extremely familiar with them. So this might be something that yeah, because here's the conditions. And so you can put conditions on I remember when I was doing the animator, you could put kind of conditions on when it goes from one animation state to another. So, okay.
Condition to drive the animator. The animator doesn't care where move speed gets its value from. Again, it just, I'm not going to question how you got to this number. I'm just going to use it inside of the system. Your components on the outside are editing the value of move speed. And again, they don't care what's happening on the inside of the animator. We have this nice layer of abstraction that allows us.
So he's talking about the components modifying again, I don't see I don't
to
get
test
it.
these things in isolation and allows people like
I
animators
need
to work inside
I
the
need
graph.
this drawn on a whiteboard. I need a practical example, which is part of the reason I'm watching this video, because I'm hoping that we get a practical example, because so far what he's described, it doesn't sound all that amazing. But I'm trying to be humble. I don't know everything. I am a Unity noob. So and this guy is a Unity expert. So let's listen to the experts. Respect our elders, even though from the looks of it, I'm significantly older than this guy, but that's all right. In terms of how long we've been using Unity, he is older, and I'm a minor. So just remember that.
Programmers to work inside the component. A better example of this, because the one drawback of this system is that that's a string binding. So move speed is a string, and you can use an optimized hashed version of it when you work with the animator, but it's still error prone. You still have to type in a string and keep them in sync. So I'd like to see Unity move this over to a scriptable object. That would be great for me. But
I didn't understand any of that. He lost
me. It does operate like this. If anybody here has worked with a render texture, you know that there's two main ways of doing it.
I've never worked with a render texture.
Create a render texture while your game is running.
Nope.
Or you can create a render texture with a right-click context menu in your project on disk, and then have your camera reference that. When you do that, it's
I'm not even
obvious
sure
that
what
the
a render
data
texture
isn't stored
is.
there, right?
Like
This is
a
just target
texture
being
is for like if I wanted to define this as like a 5-year-old, a texture is basically a pattern you put on some rendered object. Okay.
There's some configuration on the size of the render texture, but that's
so the render texture would just be the texture that gets rendered on the object, I guess. I don't know.
Doesn't own the data that's important that your UI prefab wants to use. Instead, the camera's going to write data.
Kamaguru says, which game? No, so we're writing a game, but again, this is a learning process. It's a learning. We're learning together. Think of it as a journey into the knowledge of Unity. And along the way of that journey, we're writing a game. So I'm watching a video to try and understand scriptable objects in Unity.
Data into your render texture, and your magical piece of UI is just going to read that texture data. It doesn't know where it came from. It doesn't care that it's coming from the camera.
I'm kind of lost on this part.
Intermediate for a messaging system. So we're going to do that same type of thing with player HP. So if we have a player HP scriptable object, and we have a prefab called player in the scene. Let's say that player takes damage.
Is
and
he
then
just
they're going
making
to
objects that run on a list of input variables? I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like, right? Like, this is what I was saying last night. It's like, how are these different than free-floating variables? And the one example that Razman was able to illustrate was if I take the rusty knife, right? Let's go back and look at this. Take this rusty knife object here that is. So let me focus in on it. So, is it because it's disabled? Yes. So let's say it's an item, and then we have this whole item data. And my thought was, okay, my object-oriented brain immediately went to, okay, I want to be able to pick this item up, and then I want to be able to use it as a weapon. So the first thing that comes to mind is, well, I need to know how much I want the object to have a name. And then I also want to know how much damage the weapon does. So there's two things right there. So my object-oriented brain immediately goes, okay, let's have an item base class. Well, what the hell? Wait. Look, I'm just literally hitting my desk. Anyway, so it was like, well, let's have a base class, and then and then the base class will have a name, and then it will have a damage score. That's what I was calling the value that represents how much damage it does, a damage score. And so it's like, have that in the base class, and then you can either have an instance of the base class and then you call it a knife, or if you really need to, you can derive a knife class, and then you can take that script, you can attach it to the knife model and the actual like model thing asset, and then now that's your prefab. And so now suppose you have that, you have your model with the script attached to it that has its name and it has its damage score. And now say you duplicate that 100 times. Let's just say you put knives everywhere. And now, so all of those knives, because you've duplicated them all, they all have a damage score of 5. Again, just making up numbers. They all have a damage score of 5. Now say, oh, you're doing your game balancing, and then you realize, that knife, it should really have a damage score of 10. So now, without scriptable objects, now what you have to do in the way that I described it is you have to go to each one and modify it to 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Whereas with scriptable objects, if you do it a little bit differently with scriptable objects, you just have to modify the scriptable object that defines the damage score. And then now all of them have that same damage score. But I can still think of like 6 different ways to do it without a scriptable object. Like and so I am trying my hardest to realize I am a Unity noob. I've said this like 5 times this stream already. I'm a Unity noob. So I don't know what I don't know. So I'm hoping there is something I don't know that I will know, and then I will know why Razman knows to use scriptable objects or whatever. So that's the journey we're going down right now. All right, let's back up.
So we're going to do that same type of thing with player HP. So if we have a player HP scriptable object,
all right,
and we have a prefab called player in the scene. Let's say that player takes damage, and then they're going to subtract some amount from player HP.
Okay.
The player doesn't know what happens after that. The player doesn't know who cares about player HP. But there's a health UI prefab also in the scene that happens to be referencing the same variable. So this can read that change in the player HP and just display a health meter that decreases. And this creates a new layer of abstraction where the player doesn't have to go out and say, UIManager.instance.health.update my number thing. Similarly, we can add new systems that care about the player HP. Our audio system, somebody can just come in and say, we're going to monitor this variable and use that to ramp up the music as your HP gets lower. Enemy AI can reference it, and you can imagine any amount of different systems referencing this.
Okay.
But there's a very clear separation that we don't have. The player does not communicate directly with these, and these things do not know about the player.
That's fine. I mean, okay, I guess. But look at this graph. Let me ask you. What with what he has drawn here, what would be so bad if we deleted player HP and everything was just attached to player? Like, what's so bad with that? Like, what's so wrong with that? Tell me why that is bad. And if you could still add as many different things on the right-hand side as you want. Why do I need this extra step? Okay. Not sure says it's a management issue. Maybe. Make a million different prefabs and it's all impossible to manage. Yeah, I mean, I can see how having all of these prefabs, I can see how it gets out of hand quickly. I just don't see this as the optimal solution. Yet.
It does not communicate directly with these, and these things do not know about the player. They're just working off of the shared variable. I'm going to do a quick demo that shows some of this off.
All right.
This has audio, so if it doesn't work or if it's super loud, I will pause it.
All right,
Here we
look
have,
at it.
Let's just call this the sphere of pain. It's just a collider that if this lovely cube collides with it, it will return the amount of damage that should come off of the player. So simple player has a WASD
I wish I
mover,
could see this.
Not the component I'm interested in getting into here. But this simple unit health, if everybody, yep, there we are.
Simple
This,
unit health is
references
what he's talking about over on the right-hand side.
HP
Okay.
variable. And when the player collides with something, it's going to subtract a chunk. And when it starts up, it's going to say reset my HP to this max value. So here, let's get these WASD controls going. If I click on the HP variable, can everybody read this in the inspector? It says 100.
Yeah, it says
And
100.
if I bump into something, very unceremoniously, it's dropping to 60, 80 every time I hit something.
Okay.
Let's turn on the HP meter. This is just a prefab that's completely isolated, referencing that object. So you can see the HP meter's in here now, and that's going to update. Again, this HP meter is just
Okay,
a
I've done
component that I
this
made called an
already,
image
but
fill setter.
okay.
Incredibly small, simple. It's using the Unity image class and setting its fill amount to the HP divided by the max HP, which are all variables. Very simple component.
Oh my God. Wait a minute. This is the dumbest thing. So I don't know if you can see this, but he has float. It says public float reference variable, public float reference max. C# already uses references. Like, why do you need to reinvent a reference? Like, why? Like, you can already do this with the mechanics that C# provides. Oh my God. The alternative could be using the observer pattern. There's 1,000 different alternatives. I don't understand why you need scriptable objects. But we're still learning. We're still learning. Tygo Gomes, welcome. And Tygo Gomes, let me, if you're watching on a desktop, I realize, Tygo Gomes, that you are in the mobile stream. I'm going to post a link to the desktop stream in the chat. Feel free to join us over the desktop stream. If you're on desktop, you can probably see a little bit better. All right. So, okay, let's just keep going though. I want to reiterate, I do not know what I'm talking about when it comes to Unity. So maybe there is something that I just don't know yet. That there's some hidden power that I'm just not seeing yet. Not sure says nope, can't see. Yeah, I can barely see the text, honestly. I think scriptable objects are just another name for globals. Maybe. I mean, but it drives me nuts how he literally has a type named float reference, whereas references are literally built into C#. So tell me, why can't you just use a regular reference, motherfucker? Why? I'm getting angry again. Oh, I got so angry last night I got so angry. Tygo Gomes says on the phone embed. All right, man. Then you check it out. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining embed.
Which are all variables.
I'm very soothing. A very soothing stream here. I can put you to sleep in a minute.
A very simple component. I can click this and drag, and we can even see this update in real time. If we're testing our meters, you don't have to have a player in the scene. You could just have an empty scene that has your UI. And
okay, that's kind of cool. I guess. You
can test everything out. So that can save your UI designers a lot of time. Let's add, whoa, I don't want that. Let's add a warning sound. So now, when the player's HP gets low, we've got a new type of component, very simple component, watches an HP variable, and says if it's below some threshold, play a sound.
Okay, but see, okay. So, oh my motherfucker. So this is a script called variable audio source, and all it has done is it has just so you know how we have these variables in our scripts. Like, I'll show you what I'm talking about. It'll make sense in a second. So we had, let me find something. Let's look at Sun NPC, for example. And then here is the Sun NPC script. And then over here, we have a target, and I can drag something into the target, and we have a command menu. I can drag, like, that's like, oh, okay, now we can drag a float into the inspector. Like that I'm getting angry. Calm down. Just calm down. Because look, at this stupid motherfucking script class, he has public float variable and public float variable, public float reference, low threshold. So so let's see. Why is one a variable, one's a reference? The low threshold, if the low threshold, I would imagine one is being edited. This still seems like the dumbest thing.
Again, the source code isn't really the focus here. It's more the idea of how these things are glued together.
No, motherfucker! Source code is the focus. Oh my god.
So let's drop this. I'll just do it the quick way. If I drop this down, we'll hear, yeah, the low health heartbeat. So let's bring that back up and see if we can make that fancier. So here, this is the exact same object with one additional component on it. So we've added a component and added functionality. We haven't had to change anything. We haven't had to delete anything. This now takes the value of HP, compares that against a curve, and uses that to change the pitch of the mixer of the heartbeat sound. So now the lower our health gets, the pitch will increase, and I will show you so to prove that I'm not lying that it just works, since that would be a waste of my time.
All right, let's hear it.
So here, if I drag this down, you can see that the speed will increase.
So there is
as
a
the HP
heartbeat
drops.
sound, but again,
And if this were to be deleted, or if the player wasn't in the scene,
again, and like I really like what Tygo said. Tygo Gomes. I'm gonna say gnomes, but I really like what Tygo Gomes said. Just use the fucking observer pattern. Like there are events built into C#. Like if you're doing something like C++, C++ does not have like an event mechanism. You have to build it yourself. Granted, it's gotten easier and easier over the years to do it, and there are countless ways to do it, but just use the fucking observer pattern. Oh my god. Oh, and Razman himself is here. What? You are watching a video and not going to AI? Is it because the new pope was chosen? Did you see the message I sent you on Instagram, Razman? It's from this video, but this is a video on scriptable objects. I am trying to embrace scriptable objects. I am trying to understand them. I am trying to appreciate them. But all this is doing is making me angry. Remember how angry I got last night? Oh, this is making me angry. Not quite as angry as I was last night, but so far, I have seen nothing that has been like, oh, wow. Yeah, no. If I had to do that without scriptable objects, it would be so complicated and convoluted. I've seen nothing like that so far. Everything this man has shown us, I feel like I could do I could do fairly easily without scriptable objects. But maybe I'm wrong.
all of these systems would still work, and we can just add new functionality with a very minimal risk of breaking things.
All right.
Not the scene. There we go. Nope.
Okay. Demo,
All right, so
event architecture.
Using these variables is a useful way to share data between systems, and it also, this form of the data has some sort of persistent state, where if you load from scene to scene, since it's in memory in a scriptable object, in the in-memory copy, your next scene will be able to access that same data, and that's very useful for something like player HP. But there's a lot of cases where we don't.
Now that is one thing because that's one thing I have not encountered yet, is persisting data from scene to scene. And I wouldn't even know where to begin on how to do that. So maybe that is one area where scriptable objects are very useful. So for saving things like, player health, NPC health, and inventory and things like that. Maybe scriptable objects, maybe they shine there. I don't know. I'm skeptical, but maybe they do. Oh, I miss my wife. I wish she'd come back up here.
Don't actually care about the data that we're passing. We just want to say, something has happened and I would like you to respond now. So now we're going to talk about event architectures. Also, surprise, I'm going to use scriptable objects. An event architecture helps modularize systems, much like these float variables do.
Yes.
And it lets you reuse them in in other projects. At our studio, we have a lot of projects running at a time, and we have our own Unity framework. So
what was I talking about earlier? Is like when I am creating these prefabs, or even the classes, not even the prefabs, but the classes, I am thinking with the idea of, will I be able to use this in a future project? Like that is constantly in the back of my mind. And that's why like things like the base NPC and like the way that I did the NPC hierarchy of inheritance, like that, I think like that's something that should be pretty easily just plopped into another project.
something that we can.
But maybe it all needs to be one great singleton scriptable object. Maybe that's what it needs to be. The marriage of the two most beautiful things in the world: a singleton and a scriptable object. A singleton object. A skringleton? A skringleton object. There we go.
Connect these framework modules to our project is always something that we need to come up with when we start a new project.
Tygo Gomes says, I think they can be useful. It will click once you find the right usage. I think you're right about that. Like I do think that I just need more experience to really appreciate it. Inventory systems are the perfect use case to demonstrate this, in my opinion. Maybe I could see that. I could see that at least for scene to scene persistence. But all right.
Project. And using an event architecture allows you to just drag and drop something in, and okay, the bindings between this and the systems in our game, we'll make those be events. It helps isolate prefabs, much like those variables. And a prefab can say, I respond to an event, and I don't care where it comes from. So if you raise it, I'll do whatever my prefab tells me to do. And it's a little bit of an optimization over the model of the variable. So an HP meter, you might want to have that watching closely if your HP is a wide range. But in a lot of cases, you don't want to be busy checking what do you know, what do you know, what do you know, what do you know. And instead, just have a one-off event. And it's also highly debuggable. If you can invoke these events through the editor or through other systems or through a UI, it's easy to identify.
Okay, now if that is an option, being able to invoke events through the editor, I would love it if he showed an example of that, because I think that actually would be a very powerful feature. Or not feature, but it'd be a very powerful thing for me to know how to do. I could see that being useful. Isn't it just data structures that monitors the game variables? I mean, I still don't get it. I don't get it. Like, you know, even though, like Tygo Gomes said, where it could be useful for inventory systems. Like, okay, if we put this scene to scene persistence aside, because I don't hear anybody saying that like you need to use scriptable objects for scene to scene persistence, which makes me think there must be other ways to do scene to scene persistence. So let's put that aside for a second. An inventory system, why couldn't you just have a fucking class that says inventory? It has a vector of items or, you know, inventoriable things. Like it's not making sense to me. It's not. And I need to step away. I need to step away for a second. So I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. I'm coming back. Just give me a minute. I'm here. I know you guys missed me. Don't worry. Ugh. All right. It's all good. Papa Bear is back. Papa Bear's here. Let's get back to it.
If the event's raised, is the behavior correct? Yes. Well, is the event being raised? Yes. And if you go down that search flow, you can kind of do a binary search to hunt down where your bug's coming from, on the raise side or on the response side.
Mr. What the hell is that? Mr. Wolfheat? Mr. Wolfheat. I kind of like that name. I have tried using them for persistence, but don't like it. I prefer to have those things in a separate scene that is never unloaded. Like I said, I haven't tried to tackle scene to scene persistence, but that sounds like a perfectly plausible. That sounds a bit clever, and that sounds kind of. So you would have a scene. just like a persistent scene that is always in memory, that's never unloaded. And I would imagine if that scene is just kind of pure data, that there's not a lot of overhead to it. So again, like I'm not getting it, man. I'm not getting it. I really want to get it. I really, really want to understand it. I really do, but I don't. I'm not getting it.
Unity has this thing called Unity event. That seems like the first place I should look if I want.
I'm intrigued by this Unity event. Tell me more.
An event in Unity. This was introduced, I think,
because I've been using, like, when I've needed an event, I've just been using C# events, like regular old C# events. So yeah. Tell me more about this Unity event, please.
4.6 with the UI system, so its primary focus.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to slow it down so that I make sure I understand it even better. No. I don't want sleep timer. I don't know. Okay, no, we'll go to 1.25. Check that out, boys.
Happens when you click a button. So it looks like this in the inspector. You can pick an object, and once you select an object, you get a drop down of all the functions that you can call on that object.
Really? Wait. Where was that?
UI system, so its primary focus was what happened. Unity has this thing called Unity event. That seems like the first place I should look if I want an event in Unity.
Yeah.
This was introduced, I think, in 4.6 with the UI system, so its primary.
Where is this? On example needed. List is empty. Where would I find that? I'm trying to think of. I can't think of anything offhand that has a list or a vector. Let me get rid of this. What do we have? I want to look under. I just want to look under assets. Let's see. Assets. All right. Oh, there's still a bunch of shit in here. Oh, this is going to give me all like vector 2, vector 3. No. Is it list in C#? Wait, so in C++ you have list and you have vector. I imagine it's the same thing in C#. List. Vector. I guess I'm not using it. I'm pretty sure there is a list and a vector in C#. Maybe somebody in chat can let me know. But all right, let's get back to the video.
Primary focus was what happens when you click a button. So it looks like this in the inspector.
You can do don't destroy unload. You can use do destroy unload. I mean, that sounds like that sounds like a perfectly plausible. So, but I guess my only question there. So let's say I did that. Let's say that the variable, the data that I wanted persisted from scene to scene. If I did that by using a scene that never unloaded, how would I reference? I'm trying to think if I'm in a scene, how do I reference data that's in the other scene? But yeah, I'm not sure how. I'd have to try that. I'm not sure. The UI button on click is an example of the Unity event that is there by default. And then TyoGnome says there's array. Yeah, but I think there's also list objects because an array is, well, again, my expertise are in C++. C#, I haven't used C# in years. But the array operator, or the array, the brackets, it's very primitive. In C++, it's literally just a memory offset. That's all it does. I would imagine it's similar in C#, but I would imagine there's more fluff to it, like there's memory management and everything. But maybe not. Maybe the bracket array is actually a list, the same thing as a list under the hood in C#. I don't know. But okay.
You can pick an object, and once you select an object, you get a drop down of all the functions that you can call on that object. So here you can call
all the events.
Set active to true. This is, in my mind, not really an event. It's a very useful tool, but this is actually more of a serialized function call because you're saving out ahead of time exactly what you're going to do. There's some advantages to this. This is still a very useful pattern. We use it everywhere. You can hook things up in the editor, so this allows for things to be modular, and you don't have to have code, that sort of last meter that connects one system to another. You can just do that using these Unity events. So your code doesn't need to assume it's bound to a button or it's bound to a collision.
Yeah, I like that.
It allows you to pass arguments. I'm not going to get into depth on that too much, but it's one of the things that people don't always use with them. You can extend Unity event with whatever type of the argument you want to pass. So
Okay.
Unity event.
That is one thing that is another feature about C# that I kind of love. So that you can have a class, and I'm sure there are ways to disable this if you are like a library author, like if you write libraries, but you can have like a class foo, and then let's say you inherit or not inherit. Let's say you have class foo in a library, but then you want to extend it. You want to add some of your own custom methods to that foo class. And you can do that with just like public extend. I don't remember the syntax. It's like public extend foo or something like that. But basically, you are in line inserting your own methods and other crap into this already pre-existing class. I thought that was so cool. I think is it called partial classes or something in C#? I don't remember. Like that's something that I think about all the time in C++. Like in C++, you can't do that directly. You have to do something like you can inherit from the class as long as the class isn't marked as final, or you can do a what is the pattern? I forget the name of the pattern where you create your own class and then you have a member of the type you're trying to extend in your class and like things like that. But yeah, C# is great. No, it's not interface. So let's see, Mr. Wolf, he says, don't destroy and load, just make it messy, in my opinion. Keeping it in another scene keeps the structure. Scenes can reference other scene items if they are loaded in the hierarchy. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Interfaces, extension methods. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm talking about. But yeah, no, I love that feature of C#. I remember using that feature like when it first came out, and I loved that feature. I wish C++ had that feature. Oh, jeez. I'm going to choke on my own saliva. God damn.
Bool, and if you declare that as serializable, you can use that new class as something that you can pass data with. When you do that, the arguments...
Okay. Not Sure says we should make the inventory a singleton. It's not a terrible idea. I would still say you don't want to make the inventory a singleton because the inventory is going to have, you're going to need it now, just thinking off the top of my head, now your singleton is going to need to know what an item is, and it's going to have an interface into the item class. It would probably also need to know, maybe that's all it needs, so maybe it's not terrible, but I would still avoid using a singleton. I use scriptable objects as templates for items. I can provide an ID, description, cost to buy, icon, any data I want in them, and spawn instances of it. I just use them as data containers. I use a separate always loaded scene for global managers. I usually go for the singleton pattern to access those global managers though. So it sounds like what you're describing, like as templates for items. It sounds like you're almost like you're describing a base class. Like it does. Now I understand with a base class, you're not going to be able to You're not going to be able to instantiate it and just kind of have it free floating, which is kind of, I guess, what scriptable objects are. They're just kind of you can think of them as instances of a class that are not attached to any game component or game object. I guess if I think of them like that, that's a little more easier to grasp or to accept. That's the better word, to accept. Because I'm very anti-scriptable object, but I want to believe. I'm like Mulder from the X-Files, though. That's probably like well beyond, because I have actually, I was going to say I have a feeling you guys are probably pretty young, but I don't know. Some of you were talking like experienced developers, so maybe not.
Or they are dynamic. So
partial classes is just a way to separate one class into several parts. Yeah. Well, but you can also well, maybe you can't. I don't know. Like, so scriptable classes, the way I thought about it in the useful is like, you could have part of a class on one file and part of a class on another file and then bring them together. I don't know. Anyway.
So let's take a look at on example needed with a Boolean. So other things.
Okay. On example needed with a Boolean.
Thing
All
that's
right.
set active. If you click, you get this new section up top that is dynamic arguments. So at the bottom, you have
I'm kinda
arguments
lost
that you
at
can
where we're
specify
at
in the
this.
inspector. And if you select one of these, this means
Tygo Game says I'm 37 and know the X files. Good. No, I just assume that everybody listening to a live stream is like a Gen Alpha 15-year-old. Like, I just assume everybody is.
it's going to wait for the event to be raised in code with an argument, and it'll forward that along. There's still some problems with this. As I mentioned, it isn't really an event system. because it
I got to be honest. I kind of am lost in what he's talking about now.
bindings. So if you use an event for a button response, that means a Unity event for a button response, that means that button needs to know exactly what object responds to it.
So I have. Let me ask a question, because some of you guys really seem to know kind of what you're talking about. That I don't mean that as an arrogant insult. Just that I mean legitimately. Like some of you guys seem pretty knowledgeable. So, and I am by no means a Unity expert. So that let me ask. I have. Let me make it. So I have this menu which pops up when an NPC, like you can like press E to interact with an NPC, and then you see this menu that pops up. And I am handling the clicking. I thought I muted that. I am handling the clicking of one of these buttons with just an event. Where is it? Yeah, just add listener. So is there a Unity event way to do that? Like, is the button, is it actual button object? Oh, wait a minute. On click. Oh, look at this. Oh, add to list. Oh, heavens me. On click. And then so, wait. Come back. Baby, come back. You can blame it all on me. Okay, so runtime only. Oh, would I just literally drag a script? I'm just going to drag a script. Let me see. Yes. Oh, God damn it. Come back. Oh, I like that. Okay, because I felt that doing the add listener thing was a little, I don't want to say hackish, but I felt that it was not the quote unquote best way to do it. I didn't want to say right. I purposely said best. I didn't feel like it was the best way to do it. This feels more natural to do it with this on click in the UI kind of thing. I will have to explore that later. Let me make sure I undo what I just did. But okay, that's good to know. Good to know. All right, let's get back to it.
If you want to keep your UI in its own prefab, which I would recommend, and have some system that's not in that prefab respond, you have a challenging system now. Now you need to make an awkward class at the top.
Oh man, I see how it is. You're going to listen to the new, but not me. Yeah, no, I'm not listening to you, Razman. You're the one who sent me down this path, this nightmare path to begin with.
Prefab that responds to every single button click, and when you make a new button, you have to go in and make a new response. So this becomes a little bit of a problem when we're trying to.
You could do it with on-click. Yeah, you drag the instance with the class you want to call, and then select any method in the list. You can do it both ways. Unity events will not scale well. Well, you need to be clever about it. Why would they not? Trying to think of why they wouldn't scale, but all right.
Modularize and extend things. Yes, the hard references in the button are the problem. And there's some limited serialization with Unity events. The capability of a Unity event far surpasses the serialization model that they use for the Unity event. What I mean by that is with the Unity event, you can define something that.
So real quick, seems to be a bunch of chatter. I am going to, for the guys that are listening on mobile, if you are on a desktop and you are on my mobile stream, you can come to the desktop stream. I know Tygo Gomes is in bed, but I'm going to post a link to the desktop stream. So Mr. Wolf, if you are on a desktop and you would like to join us in the desktop stream, you might be able to see better. All right.
It takes up to 4 arguments, and those arguments can be just about anything. But the only ones that you can actually edit in the inspector are if it takes 1.
Yeah, so Tygo Gomes says you'll find yourself dragging and dropping selecting methods. I can see that. Like that was the first thing I thought of when you said it wouldn't scale well. I can see that.
Argument, and the argument is an int bool string, one of the
I wonder if he'll
first
mention
class
not
primitives that
scaling
Unity
well.
treats,
I don't know,
or
maybe not.
Unity Engine.object. So you do run into some issues when you're trying to serialize out.
Add
different
listener
Unity
is
event
good for
responses.
dynamic button
And also there's a
behavior.
garbage allocation.
Using the
Since
same
it's a
button,
serialized
but
function
calling
call, it's using
specific
string
method.
to resolve what message gets
the
response.
editor in
So
Unity
every
works
time you call
great.
that,
Yeah.
you're going to see a little bit of garbage. This doesn't make them useless. That just means you don't want to call it every frame. If something happens every frame, it's not really an event anymore. So how
that's
do we
true.
extend this? We're going to try just making our own events. So we want to make them data-driven, obviously. Make sure that they can be designer authourable. So again, probably going to be a scriptable object, spoiler. And make sure that they're debuggable. It's going to look a little bit like this. Create asset menu, because it's a scriptable object.
Okay, now we're getting into some weeds because I remember I think AI mentioned using game event or like some type of events. I remember the word event and scriptable and the word scriptable object being used close together in something I read. So I'm going to pay attention.
Curly braces, the next line, we're not monsters. We'll have a list of game event listeners. And all this really is a class that I'll get into real quick. What happens when we call raise on this game event? It's going to loop through all of the listeners and call on event raised. An interesting thing about this loop is we're looping through this listener list backwards. And the reason why that's a useful pattern to use is in case an event's response or a listener's response includes removing it from the list. That way you're removing items behind you instead of removing items in front of you.
All right, I
So
got
you
to
can
stop paying
iterate through the
attention to
list
chat.
without an
I got to back up because I'm like looking at chat. I'm ignoring what this guy's saying. You know what? I'm going to minimize chat. I'm ignoring you guys. Talk amongst yourself. You know, no. Yeah. Okay, let me back this up. Back that up. All right, let's go. Let's do this again.
So again, probably going to be a scriptable
All right.
object, spoiler. And make sure that they're debuggable. It's going to look a little bit like this.
Okay.
Create asset menu.
We have a
It's
game
scriptable
event.
object. We'll call it game
All
event.
right. Yep.
Curly braces, the next line, we're not monsters. We'll have a list.
How many times is he going to make that joke? He's made that joke like 3 times. Okay, got to do it on the next line because we're not monsters. I will say, at least he has the open bracket on a new line, and but
List of game
I'll
event
give him that.
listeners. And all this really is a class that I'll get into real quick.
Okay.
What happens when we call raise on this game event? It's going to loop through all of the
This
listeners
is
and
this
call
is the
on event
observer
raised.
pattern.
An interesting thing about this loop is we're looping through this listener list backwards. And the reason why that's a useful pattern
First-
to use
yeah.
is in case an event's
Last in,
response
first
or a
out.
listener's response includes removing it from the list. That way you're removing items behind you instead of removing items in front of you.
Yes.
So you can iterate through the list without an out of range exception.
Yes.
And then 2 functions that are not super important to really define: register and unregister, just add and remove.
This is literally just the observer pattern.
It from that list.
Okay.
There's a lot of optimizations based on the number of.
Okay. I guess other than fine grained control over the order that the events that the event handlers get called, what I hope I see an advantage to using this over just using C#'s event mechanism. But let's keep going forward.
Listeners you would have in this thing. You could change to different data structures, but kind of as an abstraction on the system, the list is a
right.
good starting point.
All
You
right.
can always end your classes.
Wait.
On the system, the list is a good starting.
He is a bit of a monster. And here's why. You see that for loop? I don't care that it's one line. I don't care that it is a one-line body to the for loop. You put your curly braces there, motherfucker. Put the curly brace. That listener's open bracket, I close bracket, dot on event raised. You surround that with curly brackets. And yes, you're going to do new line, open curly bracket, listeners, then new line, then the code listeners, blah, blah, blah. New line, close curly bracket. You're a monster.
Point.
Get some culture.
You can always end your classes.
All right.
So the game event listener. This is the other half of that. This is a mono behavior. So the game event is a scriptable object. Game event listener is a mono behavior. Oh yeah, next line, not monsters, whatever. The game event is something that's referenced.
He made the fucking joke again.
So this is in the inspector. You can drag and drop the reference to the game event you want to respond to. And then use a Unity event to serialize the function call as the response. So now if you have a prefab and you have an event listener at the top of your prefab, you can decide what message do I listen for that's going to come from outside of my prefab, and then what response do I have inside my prefab. So now it's much more reliable. Your Unity event knows exactly what, or the objects that's responding to this event knows what the context of this prefab.
It feels like these developers discovered modularity and are like, everything is modular now. Everything. Like this feels like it is taking modularity to an extreme. And I have yet to see a reason why. It feels like modularity for the sake of modularity. Now, look, if you've listened to my stream at all, you know that I am a proponent of modularity, but it has to make sense, right? Like, you're not going to have a player class and then every, like, you know, well, the player needs a max health. That should be a class. And the player needs a name. That should be a class. And the player, like, no. Like, this feels like modularity for the sake of modularity. But again, I am a noob. I am a Unity noob. So I'm going to trust the more experienced person for now. Let's continue.
So we can have that Unity event response and not need to rely on external prefab data. And in this case, we'll say when the object's enabled, it registers itself as a listener, and when it's disabled, it unregisters itself. And this shouldn't be a surprise. When the event is raised, it's going to call response.invoke. I'm going to show a demo. I'm going to jump into the same cube exciting game here. This is kind of the where we left it off before, but we're going to add a damage effect. So we wouldn't want something constantly checking the HP saying, did I get damaged, did I get damaged, did I get damaged? So we'll make this work like an event. Here I made an addition to this unit health class. No, spinny bar.
I did the same fucking thing. Look. Where is it? I don't remember. Oh, here it is. Health bar. Has health. So the has health, here's what I did. Here's the pattern that I did. This is for the people in the back. All right. So the way I did this, I'm so angry right now. I'm so angry. So this is the health bar. I don't know if I'm in a playable state right now. Maybe I am. Everything might be messed up. Let me see. Also, another reason that Unity fucking pisses me off. Look, that asterisk, you see that fucking asterisk up there by the game? Because that asterisk says, oh, the game is dirty. You haven't saved. You haven't saved anything. But look at this. Look at this. Wait. I need to find it. Where is it? Is it on preferences? Oh my God. Preferences. Auto save scenes before building. What the fuck is that setting there for if it's not actually saving the set? Oh my God, Unity. Oh my God. But anyway, look. You see that health bar? That now I have some debug keys that are simply changing it, and then if the health bar gets too low, okay, the game is over. But what I'm getting at is I did the updating of the health bar with an event, okay? And what it is when I press the key, this is what events are for. When I press my debug key to manually change the player's health, I am literally just modifying the player's stat health. I'm literally calling take damage, right? And this doesn't have anything, it has no knowledge of the health bar. Instead, it just invokes this on health changed event, and then the health bar comes in and it listens in on that event. You can see right here, I has health, on health changed, and then what happens when the health changes of the player? Lo and behold, the health bar gets updated. What the fuck is what is he getting towards with scriptable objects and fucking events? I still do not understand. Let's continue.
When damage, when there's a collision that happens on this player object, it's going to invoke this damage event, which is just
I'll give you this. I'll give him this. What is this guy's name? Austin. I know he's probably talking about Austin, Texas, but his name is Austin now. I'll give Austin this. My solution doesn't. It has. There's no nice, pretty integration with Inspector. There's no. My solution probably would be difficult to put into a unit test. I'll give him that. Austin. That is a valid point, Austin.
Here it is in our scene. We can create it by saying create. It's in here, I swear. Game event, just like that. So player says game event dot raise. And that's what this Unity event's going to trigger.
Okay.
Then somewhere else in the scene, or maybe it doesn't even have to have a presence in the scene, we'll have something respond to that. So here we have game event listener. So this is just a component that all it does, this is what we talked about. It listens for an event and calls a response that is a Unity event.
Oh, great. Yeah,
so
no.
Damage,
now I know what an event is. Great.
It's 40 particles.
Oh, wonderful.
Sound. So.
Okay.
You'll love my programmer particles.
Oh, wow.
But as this happens, it just gets that event.
Okay.
As far as debuggability is concerned, if you just write a simple inspector, you can come in here and click on player damaged and raise that event as much as you want.
I'll give you this. That is nice. That is nice. But okay, that is nice. I wonder. Let me look at the description because I wonder if the code for this is available. Oh, it is. Okay, sample project. This actually might be worth like cloning and looking at. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually load it up in this Unity, but we can try. Oh, typo. All right, let's go. All right, but let's get back to the video. Maybe we'll look at that in a bit. All right, here we go.
Without actually having to recreate whatever setup gets you to that place in your game. Player damage is simple to recreate, but a lot of events are much more complex in our games. We can keep adding to this, and let's say when the player dies, there's now 2 new prefabs, death sound and death screen. Programmers don't even know that this stuff's happening because an artist can just make this thing that responds to an event and turns on.
See, again, like I said earlier, I think a lot of this is also geared towards teams. Like, geared towards the programmer is doing the programming, and then a designer, like the programmer is like adding the behaviors, right? Like, okay, the programmer is adding the ability to have the player pick something up or to tell the NPC to do something, that kind of thing. Whereas the designer is actually coming in and being like, okay, well, the things he's going to pick up are here. And when he picks them up, it's going to play this sound, that kind of thing. So that, I think like this separation of responsibilities, I think that maybe that's where some of the power of scriptable objects really shines through. But again, this project, it's like, it's me and then you guys, if you want to help out and submit a PR, but it's not as though we have a designated designer, right? It's not as though we have like, oh, well, Razman's going to go through and actually do the levels. He's going to design it. We're just going to program it. Like, Jesus.
So here, when the player dies, we're going to raise this on player killed, and it's going to turn off the player object. So let's make that happen. So there we go. I forgot to.
I feel like in my setup, I could do that in. I could do that in 15 minutes, 10 minutes maybe.
Have a broken bug. Sorry.
I mean, my setup already does that to some extent. Like you die and it goes like, what the fuck is he demonstrating?
There's supposed to be a bug right here, so I can fix it in front of you. It's like it's a bug that there's no bug. So here I'll reintroduce the bug. So now the player's dead and the heartbeat's still going, which is very annoying and very clearly you're going to get somebody reporting that.
So you have an undied event.
In QA. As a bug.
Is that what you're going to do?
When you're in late stages of QA and you can fix something in your game without having to write any code, it's so much less stressful. You don't have to retest all of the systems just for that one thing.
That's
so here's how we would fix that. We have this warning sound. All we need to do is add a game event listener to that. That's going to listen for player killed, and the response will be.
So wait, the game event listener. So that's you add a game event. Well, wait a minute. I want to see something. Let me pick rusty knife. If I add component. Oh, okay. Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. No, that's a component. No. But item data, which is with scriptable object, I was writing in order to understand this. Let me remove this component. Item data. No, of course. Why would item data be there? What? Motherfucker. I am not a violent person, but I am about to get fucking violent. Oh my God.
To turn itself off. That's it. So now when I play, which you've all seen this before because it wasn't not broken.
I mean, it's like the difference of being able to use Unity as a programming. I was going to say programming language as a. How can I put this? It's like being able to use Unity to control the game through code versus being able to write mechanisms to control the game through the IDE. Right? All right. I'm going to catch up on the messages a little bit. Let's see. Well, we got a few. Let's go back. I also thought, oh Jesus, there's a lot here. Well, I'm not used to all this attention. Wow, guys, this is like so tonight I was like, you know what? I've been using the same stream title for like months now. I was like, maybe I'll try to make the stream title a little more alluring, right? Like I'll put in some keywords like Unity and game development. I don't remember what I put in, and like it seems to have worked. Okay, I use scriptable objects as templates. I think we read that. Yeah, we read that. Oh man, I see how it is. You're going to listen to the okay. Add listener is good for dynamic button behaviors using the same button. Okay, we read that too. Where the fuck did we leave off? This is better. I can see now. Okay, Mr. Wolf. Okay, Matthew, just don't build a friendship with Addie. What's that supposed to mean, Razman? Huh? When AIs go sentient, he is the first that will go. You don't want to be related to him. Oh. I thought us Latinos needed to stick together. But I see how it is. Okay. Voy a recordar eso, pendejo, whatever. Okay. He is just describing a backward for loop. Yeah. Okay. This is what Grok says. Not sure says. This is what Grok says. A scriptable object is a data container in Unity used to store large amounts of shared data independently from game objects. They are ideal for managing data that needs to be centralized, easily editable, and reusable, such as game settings, character stats, and item databases. I guess. I mean, I get it. I like conceptually, my front brain knows this, but it's still, I still haven't accepted it. I need to accept scriptable object as my Lord and Savior, and Singleton as a disciple. I mean, that's what Razman would tell me. Razman says, not sure. He already had a mega big discussion with AIs about scriptable objects. Actually, I'm going to place one of his clips on my resume. I made a C++ super senior go berserk about Unity tools. You did. Oh man, I was so pissed off last night. I do events like you. No scriptable object here. Yes, Mr. Wolf. Yes. Not sure says I like his screen setup. I assume you're talking about Austin over here in the video. But yeah, no, I had mixed feelings about it. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Matthew says, in one project, we had a scriptable object to control each enemy type. So if enemy type A was too powerful, we could turn down the damage for that type in the scriptable object. No code change. Great for designer. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can see how these might be useful if you have a separation of responsibility. And then over Tygo Gome, who I feel is like all lonely over in the chat room by himself now, says, imagine you have a class player. The player has health, stamina, mana, and a sprite. You're not going to want to reference all UI elements directly. You write to a scriptable object that has those UI elements. Okay, so the player has all those attributes. You're not going to want to reference all UI elements directly. I'm not sure what you mean, but my gut instinct is, why not? But I'm not sure I understand what you're saying correctly. I'm making a day-night cycle with a weather system. I use scriptable objects for presets, then load them in as needed. Of course, you could do this all 368 different ways. Convenience. Yeah, I guess so. All right. Let's see. Well, I'm probably not going to finish this video tonight, which I'm not going to, I mean, we'll finish it. We'll finish what we finish. And then I'm done with it. And then tomorrow night, we're actually going to program again. Because I haven't done any fucking programming for 2 nights now. 2 nights. And this is all because of one fucking Mexican living in Canada. And you know who you are.
It turns off the sound. You can see that this game object has been actually turned off.
Why is
So
that?
now we fixed
Why
the
is
bug
that
by just
amazing?
adding one single component that affects only that object.
Like, he didn't demonstrate. That did not demonstrate a scriptable object. That demonstrated an event. An event that happens to be implemented with a scriptable object.
So scriptable objects are great for this modularization of data, making things into smaller pieces and smaller messages, but there's still some things about like the singleton pattern that we haven't solved yet.
No, we've solved everything about the singleton pattern. Don't use it. Don't use it. Now, I know as soon as he said that, I know Razman he needed beach towels to clean up everything because he got so excited.
So one of the big things that a singleton still wants to do is they want to have, in the case of an enemy manager, you want to track all the enemies in a scene. So every time an enemy gets placed in the scene, it's going to, on enable, say, hey, I'm here. And that way the manager has this high-level view of everything in the scene.
Why? Okay. I guess I can. Again, I don't. Okay. Oh, singleton manager. Okay. All right. I guess.
This still can create race conditions. Similarly, an enemy manager would want to understand where the player is, and it would want to take that list of enemies that it has.
Tygo Gomes says, "Good night, dudes. I'm off. Subbed. All right, man. Thanks. We'll be back tomorrow night. Hope you can join. Have a good night."
And say, hey, do this thing to this player. So there's more than just a collection of data there. There's actual functionality that's implied. And we can take a look at this and see what some of the problems are. As I mentioned, there's race conditions. I'm sure many of you have been in a world where you put an object in a scene and player or enemy manager.instance is called and it hasn't been created yet, so you get a null reference. Or it's checking if it's been created, and if it hasn't, it doesn't respond.
Well, that's okay. Never mind.
Which means that enemy doesn't get added to the list.
I was getting ready to correct him, but he knows more. I was going to take issue with that because it's like, well, are you doing it in the constructor? Because I made that mistake, right? Like I was trying to set things up in a constructor, but nothing is actually in place until awake is called. So, okay. Razman says, ha ha ha, your eyes.
Also, we're dealing with the same rigid singleton problems where if we have an enemy manager that does this stuff, we can't do that test scene that I talked about where we placed a bunch of enemies and we needed to bring in every other system because of its rigidity.
Yeah.
And still, there's only one.
Oh,
so we can address these with this feature
Wait. In a singleton, there's only one? What?
called runtime sets. These are going to be almost exactly
I entertain myself so much.
like the float variables, except instead of a float, we're going to be dealing with a list. So we can keep track of a list of all the objects in the scene.
Okay,
That's
I want
one
to
of the
see
goals
this
of
example. I'm
It'll
excited
avoid
about
race
this.
conditions Because if you're referencing
Okay.
a scriptable object,
All right.
its in-memory copy is available when you reference it. You don't have to manually initialize this. It's
Let's
just
do
there.
it, man. Come on.
And it's going to be more flexible than using
Stop
Unity
with the
tags or
foreplay.
Singleton
Let's get
and
to
more
the good
performance
part.
than calling find object of type. So Unity tags will let you say, yes, I'm an enemy object, and there's a special list maintained of all of your special tagged objects.
Come on.
That's also using
Come on.
string, so it's very likely to be
God, you're like a
error-prone.
woman. You just
And
keep
you can only
talking
have
and
one
talking
tag
and
on an
talking
object,
instead
which
of
to me
actually
just-
doing
that's-
anything.
That's not really what a tag is. That's more of a label.
That was a joke. Don't cancel me. If you're a woman and you happen to be listening, I love women. I respect women. Don't cancel me.
So we'll take a look at how we build these. Also very simple.
Okay.
Here I'll just do it as an abstraction because it is a little bit.
Motherfucker! motherfucker. He's literally just using scriptable objects to just recreate other fucking classes. And for what? Oh my fucking God.
Fancier, so we'll have a scriptable object that has a list of items. In this case, they could be enemies, or in my example, they will be cubes, because that's very exciting.
He's fucking oh my fucking God.
An add that will add it to the list.
God.
Much room for optimization on the list here, I'm sure. And a remove that will remove from the list. Also, all very simple. And this is all stored on a scriptable object, so you can have something in your scene reference that object. And we've used this type of pattern before when you have an RTS game. When you place a building in an RTS or build a unit, you want something that has an understanding of what are all of the units, what are all of the buildings. It's also very common that when your game is fully in production, you'll have maybe a designer says, "Oh, but I also want to maintain a list of flying
you know what?
enemies."
You know what he should
we don't
do?
necessarily have coding.
I have a great idea. What we should do? I have a great idea for a scriptable object. Why don't we make a scriptable object that is an array of single byte characters? And then we can reference that array as one value, like, a string of characters. And now we can use that to do things like define the name of stuff, or we could use it to hold the description of an item. And the best part is that it's a scriptable object.
Resources available at the time to code in a new list of flying enemies and the rules for looking that up. So we could very easily just say this enemy, or here's a new component that says add it to enemies list. Also add it to flying enemies list. And then we can maintain these lists kind of just based on whatever components we add. We also use this, and actually this was the first time that we started it, was
Mr. Wolfheat says, I think he just shows ways you could use scriptable objects, but it doesn't mean you should use them like this. I understand that. It's just that I haven't seen anything that really necessitates a script. Like I want to see something that necessitates a scriptable object. Like I want to see something like, if you use a regular thing here, then you're screwed. If you use a scriptable object, you're not screwed. That's what I want to see. I'm just not getting it. And I think probably what I need to do is just start using them. Either use them or don't use them. But I think this is maybe one of those things that I am only going to grasp with more experience. And that's fine, because that is very common. That happens a lot. Like people will say, well, you could just use a singleton, but then other people will be like, no, you don't want to use a singleton. And then the noob who's been programming for like a year, he'll be like, why wouldn't you just use a singleton? But then the person who's been doing it for 20 years will be like, don't use a singleton. And then eventually the noob will understand why you don't use a singleton. But it's only something that they're really going to grasp with experience. Papa Bear found his plate empty. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. It's pissing me off. Pissed me off. I ruined my cards, my playing cards. It's all right. I have tons of decks of playing cards. I like to do like cardistry stuff, but now I have cards all over the place. Oh God, he made me. I think at this point, I think we're at a point where I know what a scriptable object is. I have a fairly okay idea of when to use a scriptable object. I think I just need to start programming. Like I think I just need to get more experience in Unity, and it'll come to me. This talk was kind of, I don't want to say it was useless. I mean, I haven't finished it. I'm not going to finish it. I think we're going to wrap up for the night, but maybe we'll play one more game of chess. But I think that's about it. I think that's about it for this video. I can't do it anymore. You won't see that in this video, I think. Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. Because honestly, there might not be an answer, because I was asking, I want to see something where if you don't use a scriptable object, you're screwed. If you do, then you're okay. There might not be a simple way to demonstrate that, right? It might have to be something that only comes apparent when your game is more mature and complex. So it's something that's not really suitable for a demonstration environment. I think we can accomplish the same thing with a global struct. No, dude, we're going to use fucking singletons, man. Singletons everywhere, everywhere. That's what we're going to do. Let's do it. Let's do a quick game of chess and we'll call it a night. I think I'm going to get to bed. I'm getting tired. Congrats, your viewership grew by 200% by changing the title. It really did. It really did. I'm going to have to like mess with the titles again some more. Like, yeah, right. I mean, I honestly think it was the title that actually drew more people in tonight. This was great. All right, let's do a game of chess and then we'll call it a night. I need to get to bed. I'm an old man, and like after all this goddamn scriptable object talk, I'm just like hey, and Razman, or maybe like you too, Mr. Wolf Heat, you can tell me what other little nuggets of Unity have I like what other little nuggets of Unity are like this that are going to piss me off this much? I'm curious. I would be curious to know. All right, come on, let's find a game. Come on. Daddy's tired. Daddy wants to go crawl in bed with his wife. Come on. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. Maybe we'll just call it a night, boys. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. But that's 2 nights in a row. 2 nights in a row. UI Toolkit. Yeah, you mentioned that last night. You mentioned UI Toolkit last night. Oh, okay. We got a game. But what is the UI toolkit? Is that because I've seen like hints where like you can add like custom menu. You can create your own. You can create like your own editors in Unity. What is that? What the UI toolkit is? And Mr. Wolfheat says probably all of them. Is he going to try and do like some stupid? I'm just going to do this. Unity input system. Where do I want to go? Go here. No, but then he's going to take, and then I take, and then he forks me. We'll just go here. The Unity. What is the Unity input system? I've seen hints of that as well, but okay, he's just being annoying. We'll go here. I'll just take him. Okay, he took me. That's fine. I'll go here. What like when would you use the Unity input system? I'm curious. Where does he want to go? He could go no. I'm gonna annoy him. This guy is a 1200 with a question mark, which means he's very new. Let's go ahead and claim the B file, attacking this pawn. He may ignore it. And he doesn't. But, no. Unfortunately, let's just... What if I go here? No, let's just go... Let's go here. Ooh. If I could somehow... All right. Good game here. I like the input system. But setting it up is the worst part for me. The end result is super easy remapping the controls. Oh, so is that like it allows you to basically configure the input system, right? So you'll reference things by like jump, right? Like Unity input.jump or something like that. And then as opposed to actually like the E key or the I key. Is it here? If he takes that, I'm not too concerned. I do kind of want to threaten his queen, though. He'll probably go here. Let's castle. I can go here. If he takes that queen, I'm not too concerned. But is that what the Unity input system is? Because I have seen that. Like when I do the autocomplete, like I wonder if I can... Actually, let me just look at it. Input dot something. Where would it be? Player input manager. So yeah, so input dot key down and then key code jump, key code something Something like that. Is that what the input manager is? Or input system? He's mounting an attack. If I go here, he takes... Let's go here. Yep. So now I'm going to push up. Exactly. Jump can take any key or controller stick button. Just an editor change. No code change once set up correctly. Public class, global variables, mono behavior. Okay. I'm gonna take this. Is he gonna try and protect it, or is he gonna move it? I mean, I don't know. I guess he could move. No, he can't. If he moves his queen there, I could take. I got to be careful because he takes, then I take back. I think I just take, right? I take that. I don't know that this guy is a... I don't know what this guy's doing. Yeah, like you said with Jump's going to be triggered by pressing spacebar, PS5 controller lower button, Xbox south button. Yeah. If I go here, let's open up this file. I think I just take this. He'll take back. He'll take back. Okay, he takes back with that. I will... Well, I can win the rook. I get his rook. Now I can start to eat pawns. I can take that one. But I guess you're going to say is useless because it's not written in assembly data structure. Rise, man, screw you, dude. No. My issue with scriptable objects, my issue is that I just don't see their utility yet. I don't see their utility. Is he trying to make a beeline? What is this guy doing? Aren't I close to mate? If I go here, then here, he has to go here. And I annoy him again. I got to be careful about back ranked mate. But I'm not super concerned about it. Maybe I could give myself some breathing room just in case. But you guys, like Matthew, Mr. Wolfie, be sure to click and subscribe. I mean, you know, if you've enjoyed yourself, if you're having a good time, you know, if I'm entertaining, is he running? What's he doing? Okay. Oh, okay. That might have saved him from checkmate, but let's go down here. Is he going to go back over to the A file? I also use scriptable objects for quests. I have quest A, which can trigger quest B. They also contain data like rewards and quest title. I think this is checkmate, right? This is checkmate. Yep. All right. Oh, okay. We at least we ended this stream on a high note. Yeah, subbed earlier. We'll be tuning in when I can. No, it sounds good. Like I said, tomorrow night, I want to do some programming. Last night and tonight, Mr. Razman, the sneaky Mexican, that's his new name, Razman the sneaky Mexican, he And I'm allowed to say that because I too am of the Latino persuasion. So before you try to cancel me, no, 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 no. And I'm going to speak in Spanish. No, 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 no. No puedes hacer eso. No, 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 no. Soy Latino también. So no puedes me cancelar. Or no me puede cancelar. So don't even try. Well, I don't even remember what I was going to say. But tomorrow night, we're going to do some actual programming. I want to, because the freaking item. Like, I mean, we have a rusty knife just sitting on the floor, just this rusty, dirty knife, and our man can't pick it up. He can't pick it up. So we're going to give him the ability to pick it up, and we're going to give him the ability to stab the guards. Okay. He's going to be able to stab the guards, and tomorrow night, we're going to accomplish picking up the knife. And then Monday, which will probably be the next stream, if I don't work on it after Monday, if I don't work on this game throughout the weekend, Monday, we're going to accomplish having him stabbed. And not sure, you better be here, because if you're not, I mean, just quit your other job. You don't need 2 jobs. Just don't worry about it. Press E, it disappears. What did I just do? I literally pressed E. Okay, but I don't think I did anything. Okay, I don't even know what state the game is in. It's a code mess right now. But I mean, and like I've got tons of shit that I haven't checked into the source control because I don't want to right now. Like it's like I want to get the knife situation squared away. So we'll handle that tomorrow. We'll start handling it tomorrow. Hopefully by Monday we'll be able to attack, and then we can get into some other fun stuff. But thanks for watching. Be sure to click and subscribe. Also, check out my travel channel, which is Addy Goes Places. This is Addy Goes Live. Check out Addy Goes Places if you like travel. I like travel. So, oh yeah, and I gotta book my trip. So I'm going to be. And that's another thing. Like I'm going to be in Africa, I think for 4 or 5 weeks. So I don't know if I'm going to be streaming then. Got to figure that out. So thanks for watching, guys. And I will see you tomorrow night, 7:00. See you then. Bye.